Hello, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished viewers, and fellow enthusiasts of arts and culture. Welcome to a truly special Zoom interview today. We have the distinguished privilege of being in the presence of a truly special individual whose career spans through the world of acting, directing, and producing. He's a trailblazer in the entertainment industry. And today, we're going to explore his journey, his incredible accomplishments, and the profound connection that he maintains with his Panamanian culture. Without further ado, I would like to present to you an interview where he's in Los Angeles and I'm in New York, and we present to you this amazing story. So why don't you come and join us? So we'd like to welcome Señor Carlos. Bienvenido. ¿Cómo está?
Muchas gracias. Hello, Miroslava. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm doing just fine, and I'm very excited to be here with you today.
All right. Well, I'm sure the community here in New York is so excited to see and to finally have this meeting with you. So we're going to start. And we have some questions that some of our members. So we are part of the Sociedad Molas de Panamá, as you know, in New York. And some of our members had some questions for you. So so here we go. So one of our members wanted to know, could you start by sharing some insights on your background and how your heritage has influenced your career in the entertainment industry?
Sure. First of all, I got to tell you, I have to do a shout out to New York City and the communities in New York, because I consider myself part New Yorker, having lived there for 13 years. In fact, New York was where I first started my career when I first got out of university. A little bit of background. Well, I was born in Panama. I grew up in Panama. I started doing theater in Panama at Colegio San Vicente, a tiny little Catholic school run by American nuns. And I think the first thing I ever did was one year, the Mother Superior announced to me, because I was muy travieso and always getting into trouble, a lot of energy. And one day she said to me, "Oh yeah, we're going to do a Christmas play this year, and you are going to be in it." And I'm like, "Really?" And the play was called Amal and the Night Visitors. It's this little operetta by Giancarlo Menotti about a little boy on a crutch. He's a little crippled boy. And this is the night that Jesus was going to be born. And he lived with his mother, who ran an inn, una posada. And one night there's a knock on the door, and he opens the door, and these three men are there looking like, it was the three kings. And it was the whole thing about how they stayed with the mother and they were on their way to, anyway, little operetta. And then La Madre Superior me dijo, "And you are going to play Amal, the little crippled boy." And I had to learn how to sing a song and stuff like that. That was my first time on stage. And I loved it.
Wow,
do this. Aplauso, más aplauso, por favor. But of course, back then, I'm dating myself, but this is Panama in the mid to late 50s. And I wanted to do theater from then on, but there was very little opportunities. You know, it wasn't as developed as it is now. So I had this hunger that had been awakened, and I kept looking for places to do theater. And then finally, when I finished high school, I started, back in those days, we had what was called the Canal Zone, you know, the American enclave in the middle of Panama. And they had theater over there, because they had, like, you know, community theater, and they had theater in the schools and stuff like that. And I managed to convince my parents that the only way I was going to get ahead in the world was if I could go to the American Junior College in the Canal Zone, because I said I wanted to study commercial art. And my parents humored me, and so I enrolled in Canal Zone College in La Zona del Canal, and that was my first opportunity to really, really study theater, to have a real theater teacher and to be in plays and stuff, and I loved it. So I spent the next 3 years in the Canal Zone doing community theater and theater with the colleges and things like that. And I was so fortunate because, you often hear that there are people that can change your life. And that one first theater teacher that I had at Canal Zone College was a lovely man, an American teacher, and he decided to mentor me. He told me he decided that I had talent, that I should go out into the world, et cetera, et cetera. And he took it upon himself to research opportunities in the States at higher education. One day he called me and he said, we're going to do this project together. I have a form here. We're going to fill it out and we're going to send it in. And it was an application for an acting scholarship at a small private college in Missouri. A couple of months later, he called me up and said, guess what? You're going to the States. And it was true. I got this acting scholarship to go to this wonderful theater department at a school called Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri. And that gentleman changed my life, because that is how I came to the United States as an eager, wide-eyed Panamanian. Oh, I'm in the States. And I stayed there. And once I realized, oh, wait a minute, you can go to school like this. And of course, I was then in the States on a student visa. And I realized, oh, if I want to stay in the States, I have to keep being on a student visa. So I made it my business every year to go into the library. This was years before there was no Google then. So you had to go into the library and research and do stuff. So every year I would spend time in the library looking up scholarships, opportunities, things like that. And I am happy and proud to say that I spent my first 6 years in the United States as a student, because my first 2 years when I finished at Stevens College, I got my BFA, but I'd already lined up a graduate assistantship at the University of Illinois, and I went there and got a master's degree. And after that, I had lined up a graduate fellowship at Wayne State University in Detroit. And I went there and spent 3 years in a PhD program, but mostly doing classical theater because that's what I was interested in at that point. And Wayne State had a resident repertory company to do just the classics, and you had to audition to become part of that company. It was national auditions from all over the country, and I made it there. I played Romeo there for 2 years.
Oh,
And then when that was over, by then I had started, the process of getting a permanent resident visa and everything. So I was kind of treading water in Detroit, waiting for the visa to come through. It did. And then I moved to New York, because that's what you do when you're an actor. You go to New York, And and then I stayed in New York for 13 years. So hello, New York. I was there. I lived there. I love it. I love it every time I go back. And that's kind of my origin story.
no, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now,
Mhm.
do you so you have a rich diversity, as far as like your background, and really like our background being Panamanians. Are there any projects or anything that you can share with us that perhaps like highlight, or maybe there was some influence from your history from Panama that may reflect in your work?
Well, I would have to go a little bit from now backwards,
Mhm.
because when I first, well, it isn't all happy. I mean, when I finally did land in New York to be a professional actor and to try to look for work, and everything you hear is very true. It's a very, very difficult business. The competition is killer. But then on top of that, you start learning new problems and obstacles that you encounter when you really actually do get into the professional world.
Mhm.
Like I said, I spent my first 6 years in the academic world, in the academic environment,
Mhm.
doing Shakespeare's, and studying the ideals of theater and so forth.
Yeah.
With this vision that you were training to be an artist, and then you would go into the profession and be treated as an artist, and you would do great things, great heady projects and things. The reality hit me hard when I got when I really did step out into the professional world, that then you run into what is referred to as stereotyping, you
Mhm.
know, encasillando a la gente, and you get categorized very rapidly in the industry according to race, which was something that
Mhm.
I hadn't really experienced that. And see, this is one of the differences that really hit me in transitioning from growing up and living in Panama and then coming to the United States. Um, I had not really confronted that with the force that I found in the United States. And I'm talking, let's be honest, about racism
Mhm.
and the fact that I had to compete on a different level, and that the opportunities, I really realized when I started to pursue a profession that my opportunities were much narrower than I had anticipated. And that was a big trauma. And that, led to anger, depression, whatever. It took a while to
Mhm.
get over that. And that became like a real crucial moment of like, whoa, this is what people were warning you about. Now you have a decision to make. Do you stay in this business and fight that whole other thing, which they don't teach you that in school, at least not when I was coming up, that you're going to run into that. And that's a reality. What are you going to do about it? Or are you just going to turn around and say, okay, I made a mistake, but I didn't. I mean, I stayed, I stuck it out. But it was different back then because talk about heritage and what you bring to the party. When I first started in the, I refer to myself now, and I'm very happy to, as an Afro Latino.
Mhm.
But when I first started in the industry, that meant nothing. No, but that just like that term did not even exist in the consciousness. And when I started in the business, the opportunities for Latinos in general, and actually for all minorities, were much, much, much narrower than they are today. Thank God there's been progress, but there's still a ways to go.
Yeah.
So what you quickly learned was that your heritage, your individuality, whatever, really didn't count for much because you were just part of this big amorphous blob, of dark-skinned people. And the things that were being written at that time, were absolutely stereotypical, meaning in my case, oh, he's big, he's dark, he must be bad,
Mhm.
So there was a lot of bad guys and murderers and rapists and drug dealers were the things those were the things that came along, and I was so grateful for theater did rescue me because all of those years of training and so forth and so on, I found that the real opportunities for expression, and for doing work that I could feel proud of were in the theater. In the other media, like movies, television, forget about it. It was always like, the guy back there who's going to hit the old lady on the head. So in terms of expressions of heritage and things like that, that was very, very difficult. What did rescue me in New York, again, speaking of theater, was that I had the good fortune after a couple of years, I did what was called an industrial movie, or they still use that term. These are educational films, instructional movies, and they hire actors, to play whatever. And they were a lot of, I got hired to do a film for the armed forces, whatever. And so I went on location to do this film. And another actor on the film, we got to talking and discovered we were both Panamanians. And
What a
this was
small
another,
world.
yeah.
Only 6 million. Back then, how many millions were we?
Well, I think when I
Yeah.
left Panama, there was like 1 million, maybe, But anyway, there I met this guy. His name was Tony Diaz. God bless Tony Diaz. And we got to talking and everything. And he invited me to go see a play that he was doing in New York, which I did. I went and I enjoyed it very much. And suddenly I went, oh my God, because it was in a Latino theater company with all these other Latino actors, from all over the place. And this institution is still there, by the way, much respect. It was Miriam Colon's Puerto Rican Traveling Theater.
Mm.
And the thing about the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater is that Medium was very, very established actress. She had done Hollywood, she had done all that sort of thing, but she wanted to give back to the community, which is something that I believe in as well. And she created this theater basically to take productions in the summertime to the neighborhoods where the Latinos were, up in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, Staten Island. And she would put together a play and roll it around during the summertime. That was her primary mission. But then during the rest of the year, she had a theater company that she did productions and stuff. And that's what I went to see, because Tony was in it. And then he invited me. He said, "Hey, they're auditioning for the next production. You should come." And so I did. And I got into the production, which interestingly enough was called I Took Panama.
Oh.
Yeah, it was actually a Colombian piece. It's a play from Colombia, but it tells the story of the whole thing of Teddy Roosevelt and Bruno Varela and Cromwell and all that kind of stuff, and how they took Panama, how Teddy Roosevelt took Panama from Colombia. It's done as a kind of a satirical piece, so there's a lot of comedy, and it was also like a musical. So we had to sing songs and stuff, but that was terrific. And the other thing about Medium's Puerto Rican Traveling Theater is that you have to be bilingual to work there, because she does they do the same play in English for 3 nights and then in Spanish for the other 3 nights with the same actors. So you have to be able to do the play in one language and then flip it over and go into the next language. And it was crazy. I had a wonderful time there. And then that became kind of like my artistic home in New York for the rest of the time that I was there. I did about, I don't know, 15, 17 productions with the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater over the years. And that got me connected with the Latino community in Panama. And I was happy. I found my people in New York, and so that was a great refuge and an opportunity to let the heritage out, let the language out, let the arts out. And I discovered something really interesting. When you do a play in 2 languages, your native tongue wins out. Because if you go to see the play in English, and it's fine and it's great, and then you go and see it in Spanish, you're almost seeing a totally different play, because there's some of this connection through the language. It gets into the roots and the things of everybody. Y en español, it had a whole other dimension and depth than what it was fine in English, but I mean, that was something that I learned that, in fact, I believe that that's part of the reason why we have Spanglish. Because, when you're talking and rattling around and then suddenly, you can't find the right word. And especially when it becomes emotional and then the Spanish comes out, because you sort of tap into the root, So Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, lots of good memories, lots of love for New York City and the Latino community there.
Amazing.
And then there's a lot more.
Please feel free. We're so, I'm sure everyone's going to be thrilled to see this. So I'm really excited. Please continue. The floor is yours.
Okay, fine. So I did that for a while. And when I was in New York also, I discovered another opportunity to make money, because when you're an actor and you're an actor just trying to live on theater, it can be few and far between, But actually also at the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, we're doing our play there, and we're doing it in English and in Spanish. And one night after one of the Spanish performances, these really cute 2 little ladies who were sisters, 2 little ladies, blonde hair and stuff, and they came backstage, and it turned out that they were Argentinian, and they were starting a dubbing company. Dubbing is when you take a piece that's in one language and you revoice it to another language, like foreign films and stuff, that you see the films and suddenly everybody's speaking English. They had gotten a contract to dub a religious show. I think it's still around, called 700 Club or something. It's like a talk show, but it was all religion.
Yeah.
And they were looking for voices to do the dubbing work on it. So they thought, perfect. We'll go to a theater where everybody's speaking Spanish. So they were on a recruiting mission, and they came backstage and spoke to all of us and would we be interested. And of course, we all went, oh, money. Yeah, let's go. So I got a gig with these ladies dubbing into Spanish this English content. And that was my first occasion to start doing voice work, vocal work at the microphone. That was a crazy experience because, oh my God, that's hard work. I mean, there's a special talent to that. But the bottom line was that it started me on a different career path, or an additional career path of doing vocal work and voiceover work. And for the remainder of the time that I was in New York, that grew, because I also had the casting problem in commercials, because another way for actors to make money is to audition for commercials. But again, the look, the type, the whatever, it was very, very difficult. You know, back then when I was starting, the image in the world of advertising of Latinos were, oh, well, all handsome brown men with huge mustaches, you know, and of course, straight hair. And, you know, that's not me. You know, and by the way, I speak not just for the Afro-Latinos and the darker skinned Latinos, but also for the lighter skinned Latinos, because I had a lot of friends from Argentina and Chile and everything, and they couldn't get hired because you're not a Latino, because you're blonde. It's like, okay, but La Salvación was just doing voice work behind the camera, no image, just your voice. And it turned out that I had an ability to do that, you know. So I started getting, I could never get commercials before, but once I went into the microphone side of things, I started to work a lot as a voiceover talent in Nueva York. And I did tons of work. So much so that when the opportunity came to move to LA, I was kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to leave all my voice. I had accounts by then, you know, for big companies.
Yeah.
But that's just another tip. If being an actor isn't just being in front of the people, there are other ways that you can make money. By then, I had a new girlfriend, and she worked in Latino advertising, because back then, remember a time when they used to say, there are 8 million Latinos in the US. Oh my God, maybe you don't even remember that, because that was
except for the Rubén Blades con su canción de
yeah.
Right. Era en ese momento cuando él cantaba, no me recuerdo.
By the way, Rubén Blades, many props to him as well, because Rubén and I know each other from Panama, back then when he was with Los Salvajes del Ritmo. And we run into each other from time to time. I'm so happy for him and all of his great successes, you know. We used to, in fact, the last play that I was in Panama before I left was this big, huge musical production in the Canal Zone of West Side Story. And Rubén was also in it. We were both in the chorus. I played a shark and he played a jet. And that was a special summer, because we used to go out after rehearsals and crawl around in Chorrillo and all kinds of places. And he would get up on stage in these little jazz clubs, and love the guy. We're still friends. He's great. But anyway, I digress. My now wife, I think you might have met Rochelle.
Yes.
We met in New York when she was involved with, in the early days of when corporate America discovered that there was a ton of money in the Latino market if they would just pay attention to it, you know? And that was the early days of creating advertising specifically for the Latinos, you know? And my wife, who is not Latina, but she's wonderful, and she's a writer. She's very creative, and she answered an ad in the New York Times for a helper, and it turned out to be a Cuban gentleman who was just starting up an advertising agency aimed at the Latino market. She got the job. She became his ghostwriter, and she didn't know anything about advertising, but it was a paying job, and she was good. And long story short, she got promotion after promotion, and she rose in the company and everything. And at a certain point, the company it actually reached a point where it was the largest Hispanic market agency in the country. because they got Procter and Gamble as clients, and of course, you know, that's all the Downy and all that, and jabón, shampoo, whatever. So she was very much involved with that, and the company was very successful, and it grew. Started opening offices in other parts of the country, including Los Angeles. And he decided that she had to come to Los Angeles and run the Los Angeles office. She didn't want to do it. And so this went back and forth for a while. And I finally told her, look, why don't you tell him that you'll try it out? Give him a set number of months, you'll try it out. And I'll tell you what, I'll go with you. So she told him that. He loved it. Oh, excellent. I pay everything. I pay everything. So we came to LA on that little test run. It was going to be 6 months. And that was 32 years ago. And then we stayed because once I came out here, my manager, who I started out with in New York, had moved out here. And the day after I landed, she's on the phone, you know, hey, darling, don't you want to work? You know, New York, yenta. And she started running me around, sending me out to appointments right away. And I started to book jobs right away. It was quite fabulous, you know. So when the 6 months were about to expire, I said to Rochelle, gee whiz, I don't know what you're going to do, but I think I'm going to stay in LA for a little bit longer. And so we both stayed, and it was good because she prospered with her company, what she was doing, and I started to book films and television guest appearances on television.
Exciting.
And you know, and make some decent money. Now, the problem of the typecasting never really quite went away, because if you look at my resume and most of the things that I've done on camera, it's bad guys. You know, played a lot of bad guys. You know, narcotraficantes y terroristas y gente mala. But I did manage to sneak in a couple of good, fun things there in the middle, you know, like probably the biggest, most successful project that I worked on in film was the movie Speed.
Wow.
With Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I was a good guy. I was excited when I got that job because the character was a good guy. You know, he was a Latino working man, you know, with a wife and kind of a normal person, you know, not some loco por ahí, you know, mugging old ladies and stuff. So Speed was good. And you know, I've done a bunch of stuff. Now, the greatest irony of it all, and this also gets into herencia and heritage and stuff like that, is that I did get cast in a movie. Geez, this year is the 30th anniversary of its release. The movie is called Blood In, Blood Out. And ironically, that seems to have become like my legacy because I was cast as a very bad guy in that movie. We literally filmed in a prison. It was it's a great movie. Go see it. It's an enormously long movie. And it's kind of the story of that movie is a long one in and of itself, but just to, you know, not to go into the whole thing, the movie was it did not do well when it first opened. In fact, it was a failure at the box office. Nobody saw it. Why? There are a bunch of reasons, but I'm not going to go into all that right now. However, and the movie is very Chicano centric. You know, it's set in East LA. You know, for people who don't know, Los Angeles, that's kind of like saying Spanish Harlem in New York, you know. Yeah. The really heavy Latino cultures, you know, the murals, the botanicas, all that, East LA, when you come to East LA. And the movie is set there. The characters are from there. It's a whole long thing. And it was directed by a gentleman named Taylor Hackford. Much love, much props. Taylor is a very successful, big-time Hollywood director. Everything from Officer and a Gentleman that made Richard Gere a star to more recently Ray and on and on, Oscar nominated, whatever. So Taylor brought a lot of love to that project because, again, he's a gringo, but he totally gets the Latino culture. He grew up here in LA.
Mhm.
And that movie, it's a misnomer to say, oh, it's a gang picture, because it's not. It's a movie about the Latino culture here in LA, and it shows their art, their love, the familia, the values, all that kind of stuff. It just happens to involve a situation with that there are gang situations that happen in the movie. Anyway, I was cast in that film as a really horrible, dreadful person. In fact, when they first offered me the part, I said, hell no, I don't want to do that, because by then I had become pretty much an activist. I skipped over this part, but when I was in New York, I got involved with, and I ran for 6 years, something called HOLA, which is the Hispanic Organization of Latin Actors, and it is still there in New York. This was an organization that was formed like in the 70s and stuff. The Latinos in the industry were starting to get restless. So they were forming alliances and groups and advocacy groups to fight for the image of the Latino, and the job opportunities for Latinos. Like, for God's sakes, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're enfermeras. Why do you just keep writing this crap for us? And
Yeah.
Ola's mission was that, to raise the consciousness of the Latino, to show the diversity and the whatever, and to advocate for Latinos. We used to go to Broadway and pick at Broadway plays that had Latino characters being played by gringos, on and on and on and on.
Right.
So that was kind of in my DNA by the time I moved to LA. And then one of the first jobs I get offered is to play this horrible, horrible person in the gang and the blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but I did it. And the movie failed at the box office. But when it came out on video, that's when people started to look at it, to see it. And it's grown and it's grown. And now, 30 years later, that has become a major, major, major cult classic. And it doesn't die. And then the fan base is huge, and they are passionate, and and this is not just LA, this is all over the country and all over the world. I've been stopped in South Africa, in Italy, in Peru, because they recognize me from that movie. And I'm not exaggerating, and I'm saying this totally humbly, because I never expected this. I've become this Chicano icon. If you Google Blood In, Blood Out, Popeye, because that's the name of the character, you'll be amazed at what comes up. I mean, just tons and tons and tons, because the studio totally abandoned the movie. It was Disney, but la gente, la comunidad, have embraced it, and they've created, among other things, this enormous marketing of merchandise and stuff like that. And over the years, I've been seeing my face on T-shirts, on mugs, on loteria cards, on you name it, somebody invented it. And at first I was like, oh, it's okay, it's no, deja. And then I started getting more and more invitations. Like, hey, will you come to our event? Will you come do this and that? And I'm like, ah. And then finally, just right before the pandemic, I started to accept some of these invitations to fly to different places, because there are promoters now, and they call me and they go, hey, I'm doing this thing. People are asking for you. And at first I thought, well, I'm a phony because I'm a Panameño, coño. I'm not a Chicano.
Y no dijeron nada los chicanos. No dijeron nada los chicanos en
Mira, los Chicanos me adoran. It's like, it's been so heartwarming. I mean, the embrace, because I said, I'm going to go on Curioso, feel it out. And my God, the acceptance, the embrace, the warmth, the familia that I get from these folks, it's just, oh man, I mean, it's just really, really, really heartwarming and humbling, man. I mean, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. People send me presents, they do crazy things. It's I get pictures. The other day I got a picture of a man's leg with my face tattooed on it, and I'm like, I mean, it's really amazing. And so to me, that's the great irony, that este panameñito, negrito, que salió de Panamá hace años con los ojos así, ay, yo voy para Hollywood y esto y el otro. And I studied Shakespeare and all this kind of stuff. And now the thing that is imprinted in people's minds all over the world, I'm serious, Japan. Do you know Japan has a lowrider culture? You
No.
know, oh my God, they got the whole thing, and it's genuine. It's they got the lowriders and the vato clothes and stuff like that. Wow, so we're big in Japan. We're big all over the world. But I'm just saying, la vida te da sorpresa, huh? Okay, because you never know what's going to end up being like your stamp. And apparently, bueno, I'm kind of, ya tengo menos tiempo por delante que lo que dejé atrás. And I seem to be going down in Chicano cultural history as this iconic figure in that movie.
That's amazing. Una gran trayectoria. ¿Usted se alguna vez imaginó, se pudo haber imaginado esa trayectoria que tiene ahora?
No. Yo no visualizaba eso cuando empezaba, ¿no? Yo pensaba, yo tenía esa ilusión de que, bueno, uno va para Hollywood y vas a estar en películas con mujeres bellas y esto y el otro. Y bueno, el mundo tenía otras ideas.
Claro. Claro.
Sin embargo, I will say this, I've never forgotten the community and all communities, the artistic community, the Latino community. Now, it is more possible than it was in the beginning when I first started in the profession, you know, to see opportunities and to see things happening for the community, for the artists in our community. We're in a whole other world now. And I embrace that. I'm happy for it. Sometimes I see some of the projects and the opportunities that kids are getting now, and I go, no, yeah, I was too early, but that's okay. It's all good. It's all part of the progression. And so what I do now is that I really try to support. I try to mentor a lot because I believe a lot in giving back to the community. In fact, 8 years ago, I started a film festival, the Panamanian International Film Festival. And yes, and I did that.
¿En Nueva York? ¿En qué área es?
Aquí en Los Ángeles, en Los Ángeles.
Okay.
¿Sí? No, porque lo que pasó fue que en el medio tiempo de todo eso, como dije, yo me tuve que salir de Panamá a perseguir esta carrera porque cuando yo empezaba en Panamá no había nada. Sin embargo, ahora, yo diría como desde el milenio para acá, en Panamá ha habido un crecimiento enorme y muy impresionante de muchas cosas, pero incluso también la industria de cine. Y en gran parte con el apoyo del gobierno, que por fin dijeron, oye, pero esto es una industria de verdad, esto no es nada más para estar haciendo vanidades, porque el cine genera mucho ingreso económico y crea muchos empleos. Y en Panamá se han dado cuenta de eso, ¿no? Y han metido un gran esfuerzo en impulsar una industria cinematográfica en Panamá. Y han estado haciendo cosas, y claro, desde principios humildes, porque no se sabía mucho de cómo se hace esta vaina y esto y el otro, pero ahora ya Panamá se están defendiendo mucho y ya se están produciendo cosas muy buenas en Panamá. Al grado de que ahora en Panamá ya está compitiendo para los Óscares en las categorías de, foreign films y esto y el otro, y ya Panamá tiene, creo que vamos como por el 5º año de que Panamá manda un largometraje a competir en los Óscares. De hecho, que hace poco he estado ahora en contacto con las productoras, directoras de la película panameña de este año que está concursando para los Óscares. La acabo de ver hace pocos días porque estoy viendo a ver cómo les ayudo con la promoción y esto y el otro. Es un documental fabuloso que se llama Margot, Tito y yo, que es el relato sobre, yo no sé si la gente sabe esto, que por allá por los años 50, 60, por allá, una de las bailarinas más famosas de ballet era la dama Margot Fonteyn, que por mucho tiempo era pareja con la otra leyenda Rudolf Nureyev, el bailarín ruso, Y ellos eran lo máximo en el ballet en su época, en los 60, 70, por allá. Y Margot Fontaine se casó con un político panameño, Tito Arias,
Okay.
¿no? Y ellos eran una pareja muy enamorada, muy de todo. Y Tito Arias era parte de la familia Arias, de la política en Panamá, primo de Arnulfo Arias, etcétera, etcétera. Y él estaba concursando para diputado, se ganó la elección y a pocos días de haber ganado la elección, en una intersección de tráfico, se le arrimó otro carro y le dispararon.
Oh, wow.
No se murió, pero quedó cuadripléjico el señor por el resto de su vida. Y la Margot Fontaine, la famosísima bailarina de ballet, se quedó con él y ella lo cuidaba. Y este documental que acabo de ver, que va para los Óscares, relata la historia de eso, de todo lo que pasó, la relación entre ellos dos y todo. O sea que me refiero al cine panameño que se está desenvolviendo y con mucha promesa. Hay mucho talento ahí en Panamá ahora. Ahora que cuando yo me fui enterando de eso, me dije, bueno, ¿por qué no? Porque ya yo estaba concursando en festivales de cine, porque yo también soy director, escritor y productor.
Sí,
Y
leí tiene un
ya.
bio extensivo. Este, creo que vamos a necesitar parte uno, dos, tres.
Dios mío, bueno, sí, sí, porque otra de las cosas que uno descubre después de un tiempo de estar en esta industria es que de nada te vale estar sentado en la casa esperando y cruzando los dedos, ay, ¿por qué no me llaman? Y ay, si me va a llamar Steven Spielberg, ay, te quedas ahí muriéndote y pudriéndote. Lo que hay que hacer es empezar a hacer uno generar sus propios proyectos y sus propias ideas y buscarse su grupo de gente y bueno, vamos a hacer algo, lo que sea. Y ahora en la era, que estamos en la época digital, ¿no? Que cualquiera puede hacer una película. Hoy en día tú te haces una película con el iPhone, ¿no?
Increíble.
Sí, entonces yo
Increíble.
empecé a hacer eso, a hacer peliculitas cortos, y concursar en festivales de cine y esto y el otro. Y en un momento yo me dije, oye, pero ¿qué tal si yo creo una plataforma para traer lo que se está haciendo en Panamá para que se vea aquí en Hollywood? Y posiblemente crear intercambios profesionales entre Panamá y Hollywood. Y por eso yo fundé el Festival de Cine Internacional Panameño en Los Ángeles. Y por 8 años yo he estado trayendo, pero no es solamente Panamá, porque todavía no hay suficiente producto en Panamá para llenar un festival completo, era más un festival internacional latino. Y entonces yo he mostrado películas desde Argentina hasta España, de todas partes, de Costa Rica, Venezuela, lo que sea. Por los últimos 8 años he estado haciendo eso, porque también para mí esa es otra forma de apoyar a la comunidad, to mentor, to help people to get to that next level. Because then maybe one day they'll turn around and hire me.
La vida da tantas vueltas, ¿verdad? Uno ayuda a una persona, la otra persona le ayuda a uno, pero totalmente orgullosa de todo ese labor. Y sé que no hablo solamente por mí, sino por todos aquellos en la comunidad que sienten esa admiración, ¿verdad? De ver uno de los nuestros triunfar de esa manera, como usted lo está haciendo. Bueno, quería hacerle una pregunta, ya que hablábamos del mentorship, ¿verdad? Y aquí estamos con el Spanglish, como habíamos dicho,
¿Vale?
¿verdad? Y quería preguntarle, ¿qué mensaje le podría dar a aquellos quizás chicos jóvenes que están tratando de estar en este medio, que, bueno, en Panamá es bastante nuevo, como usted dice, pero que tiene una gran promesa? Eh, ¿Qué les diría a estos chicos, ya sean panameños o latinos, que lo escuchen, por favor?
Bueno, lo primero es lo que estoy seguro que ya han oído de otras fuentes, es estudien, prepárense, ¿no? La educación es súper importante y a lo que me refiero es en términos particulares, el hecho de, por ejemplo, el que quiere ser actor, eso no es que nada más que por su linda cara y que salir a la cámara y sonreír, ay, mira, ve. No, 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 no. Esto es una disciplina. Esto es una técnica. Esto hay que aprenderlo, ¿no? Y entonces hay que educarse en ese género, en eso. Hay muchos que dicen, mira, esa gran oportunidad es muy elusiva. Tú nunca sabes cuándo va a llegar ese día que de pronto alguien te da un papel o te hacen un casting en una película o algo así. Eso no pasa a menudo, especialmente cuando estás empezando. Pero el día que eso llegue, tú tienes que estar preparado. Tú tienes que saber lo que tú estás haciendo. No, porque trabajar como actor es conocer el proceso. Eso no es una cosa que tú nada más que brincas al escenario y tú sabes lo que está. Es un proceso, es una disciplina. Es como decir, yo quiero ser un bailarín de ballet y nada más que voy a entrar de la calle y hacer eso. Eso no es así. No, 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 no. Hay años de estudio, años de preparación, años de repetición, repetición, repetición. Tú tienes que saber lo que estás haciendo. Tienes que aprender a saber cómo respirar, cómo utilizar el aliento. Tienes que saber dicción, que se te entienda. Todas esas son cosas de preparación. Y estoy hablando ahora en lo específico de esta disciplina en particular. Pero en general, la educación también es muy importante porque tú tienes que ser una persona bien formada, una persona redonda, ¿no? Porque cuando tú estás trabajando, por ejemplo, en el teatro o en el cine o lo que sea, te vas a encontrar en situaciones de distintas realidades. Digamos, ¿qué pasa si te dicen, mira, vamos a hacer esta obra y está ubicada en el siglo XIX? Ok, bueno, tienes que saber algo de, bueno, cuál era la onda entonces, cómo se vestía la gente, qué tenían en la mente, qué estaba pasando en el mundo en general. Tú sabes, porque si tú entras ahí con tu panameño del siglo XXI, ¿eso qué es? ¿Tú me entiendes? Entonces, no puedo enfatizar demasiado la importancia de la preparación,
Sí,
tanto
sobre
la
todo.
preparación en la disciplina particular artística que la gente quiere perseguir, pero también en general, cultura en general. Te vas al museo, tú ves pinturas y cosas así. Por ejemplo, si tienes que hacer algo del siglo XIX, pues métete en un museo y mira pinturas de la época y cómo la gente se vestía y cómo era la cosa, ¿sabes? Otra cosa que también yo quisiera decir a cualquiera que está contemplando la posibilidad de una carrera en entretenimiento es que que miren más allá de del actor, porque mucha gente piensa, ay, yo quiero trabajar en el cine y voy a ser un actor. Pero no, 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 en el cine hay cantidades de disciplinas y trabajos distintos. No es solamente lo del actor. Mira, para hacer una película hay como 100 personas mínimo backstage, behind the scenes, you know? Y esos todos son empleos muy viables y carreras muy buenas, ¿no? Entonces, al que está contemplando algo así de entrar en esta industria, yo le recomiendo que sencillamente mira, que la próxima vez que vaya a ver una película, cuando la película termina y empiezan a salir todos esos créditos, todo el mundo se levanta y se va. Bueno, quédense ahí y lean todo eso que está pasando ahí al final de la película, porque todo eso son empleos distintos y disciplinas que existen y uno se puede ganar la vida haciendo todas esas cosas que salen en la pantalla cuando termina la película. Sin toda esa gente no hubiera sido, no hay película. Ok, la película no es porque está Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise tiene a 200 y pico gente detrás de él, ganándose buen trabajo. Ok, bueno, esa es otra cosa. Pero, después de todo, mi consejo principal para el que quiere estar en este trabajo es, I usually say this in English and I use a bad word. Don't be an a-hole.
Technical term.
Pórtate bien. ¿Ah?
Ese es un término técnico.
Ese es un término técnico, está en los libros de psicología. No, pero no, es que hay que ser buena gente. No, porque estos todos son trabajos en equipo. ¿No? Una cosa que uno va aprendiendo es que la industria, por más que no lo parezca, es bastante pequeña, ¿no? Y la voz se corre bien rápido. Y el que es malcriado y se porta mal y es grosero con la gente o temperamental, todo eso, más nunca lo van a emplear de nuevo. Y
Claro.
eso se corre, esa voz se corre. hay que portarse bien, hay que ser caballeroso, hay que tener buenos modales y todo lo demás.
Ujú.
Porque nobody, y mira, cuando tú estás trabajando en un rodaje, tú vas a estar con la misma gente por 2, 3, 4, 6 meses.
Mm.
Y a veces en una locación remota en sabrá Dios a dónde. Entonces es una pequeña comunidad, es una pequeña familia. Y mientras mejor se lleven, mejor va a ser el proyecto, mejor va a ser la atmósfera para todo el mundo. Nadie necesita a un grosero en el medio o grosera en medio de todo eso. Así que estudien, prepárense, estén listos, investiguen todos los distintos trabajos que hay, pero más que nada, no sea grosero.
Muchísimas gracias por todo ese consejo. Creo que ese consejo lo deben seguir los que van a ser actores y también los que no van a ser actores, que sean siempre buena gente, ¿verdad? Eh,
¿Mm?
¿Verdad? Una cosita, usted habló del Panamanian Festival. ¿Cuándo ocurre ese festival, por favor?
Ay, bueno, ok. La verdad es que este año no lo estoy haciendo.
Ok.
¿Y por qué no lo estoy haciendo? Por falta de fondos.
Mm.
¿Ok? Porque a mí me llena el corazón cuando sucede. Yo veo toda esa gente, todos estos artistas juntos y los intercambios y las amistades que se forman, pero eso cuesta plata, ¿no?
Correcto.
Hay que tener un buen presupuesto para hacerlo bien, hay que alquilar un local, hay que alquilar publicidad, hay que un sinnúmero de cosas. Y en los años pasados, bueno, yo parte de mi reto para poner ese festival ha sido sencillamente levantar el dinero, levantar los fondos. Y
Ujú.
entonces yo he estado involucrado en el mundo de las artes y en el mundo del non-profit por mucho tiempo. Por ejemplo, cuando yo estaba con Ola, en Nueva York, hola también, hay que levantar dinero, hay que levantar fondos. Y yo aprendí en Nueva York a escribir grant proposal.
Grant writing.
Grant writing, mija, I never bargained cuando yo me vine y dije, yo voy a ser un actor y voy a ser famoso. Yo no estudié grant writing, pero cuando me metí a administrador de artes, me di cuenta de que, oh, coño, esa es otra cosa, otra disciplina que hay que aprender. Entonces yo empecé a tener que hacer eso en Nueva York cuando yo estaba manejando Ola, porque Ola también recibía fondos del estado de Nueva York y también del National
Ujú.
Endowment for the Arts, etcétera, etcétera. Eso se transfirió acá. Bueno, esa facilidad que aprendí también la estuve aplicando acá. Y con el festival, yo era el grant writer y levantando los fondos y las cosas así. También uno busca contribuciones de empresas privadas, todo ese tipo de cosas. Y bueno, y yo haciendo eso y con la ayuda de mi señora, que con su background en advertising y marketing, también conocía a mucha gente en el mundo de las corporaciones. Y de una manera u otra, nosotros siempre logramos levantar el presupuesto mínimo básico para poder hacer esto. ¿Qué pasa? Viene la pandemia. Y
Mm.
durante la pandemia, primero que nada, el festival lo tuve que hacer en línea, porque, bueno, y lo tuve que hacer porque ya yo tenía un grant del estado de California y cuento con los grants es que ya después que te lo dan, you gotta spend it. O
Claro.
no arriesgas más nunca que te lo... Bueno,
Ujú.
así que yo tuve que lanzar el festival en línea y eso, I hated it, pero había que hacerlo. Pero una de las consecuencias de la pandemia y todo lo demás es que se fueron los fondos, los grants. Ellos tuvieron, el estado de California redujo su presupuesto enormemente. Aparte, yo tenía dos empresas privadas que me estaban apoyando ya y desaparecieron. Um, yo nunca gané nada haciendo el festival. De hecho, que a lo contrario, yo siempre terminaba teniendo que aportar de mi
Mm.
bolsillo para redondear el presupuesto. Y bueno, pues, all the money went away.
Mm.
El año pasado logré hacer la octava edición del festival porque una colega de acá, que tiene una compañía que se especializa en crowdfunding, me dijo, mira, te ayudamos, qué sé yo, y levantamos, y yo lo hice, pero lo odié. I don't like to do that. Porque crowdfunding tienes que estar haciendo payasadas en Instagram y ya estoy demasiado viejo para eso. Sin embargo, logré levantar lo mínimo para tener un local, porque tienes que pagar insurance y un montón de cosas.
Ujú.
Pero me dejó de, I can't do this again. Y entonces entramos este año y bueno, la decisión es de, ¿sabes qué? Vamos a hacer una pausa, a ver qué pasa. Porque hasta Panamá hicimos gestiones con el gobierno allá, etcétera, con la Comisión de Cine en Panamá, pero no, todo el mundo en la misma. Ha sido un tiempo muy difícil. Y entonces este año también yo hice una inversión bastante heavy, personal, en Panamá,
Oh,
porque ya yo estoy como que con un pie de vuelta en Panamá.
ujú.
Y en este último año yo invertí todo mi life savings en comprar un piso nuevo en Panamá.
Wow.
Y eso no me dejó con play money para estar haciendo festivales. Así que este año no hay festival, lamentablemente. Lo
Ujú.
voy a representar porque otro colega mío que también lleva un festival de cine y hemos colaborado antes que el festival yo estaba hablando de East LA, donde se hizo esa película. El
Ajá.
festival está ubicado en East LA, es el East Los Angeles International Film Festival,
Oh, okay.
y él me ha invitado a que haga una pequeña aparición en el festival de él,
Ujú.
como con un proyecto o dos panameños para mantener, keep the brand alive, you know? Y así estamos en este momento como en veremos, porque no sé si me duele porque el festival era muy bonito, tenemos muy buenas memorias
Mm.
y en parte yo logré el sueño ese de ver a todas las comunidades uniéndose, los puertorriqueños, los chicanos, gente desde Argentina, de todo lo demás. Es una cosa muy bonita cuando ocurre, pero de nuevo, tras de bastidores, hay mucho trabajo que hacer.
Claro, lo que no se ve, ¿no? Así que, bueno, si alguien de repente nos está viendo, entonces sería muy interesante, ¿verdad? Que pudieran colaborar con esta misión que usted tiene, ¿verdad? Porque creo que es algo muy valioso para nuestra juventud, para mantener los valores en las artes, sobre
Ujú,
todo que es un field que es muy difícil para entrar y mantenerse, ¿verdad? Para
ujú.
mantenerse financieramente, ¿verdad?
Ah,
Solo de amor no se vive, como dicen, ¿verdad? Mucha gente tiene amor al arte, pero es un arte bastante difícil. Eh,
ujú,
pero queremos, bueno, darle las gracias. Me siento súper con mucho honor de poder llevar esta transmisión a todos los que nos ven y en realidad me siento como panameña, pues, wow, muy llena de orgullo, ¿verdad? En escucharlo y verlo y saber que, bueno, que somos pequeños pero con mucho corazón y con mucho talento, ¿verdad? Así que bueno, eh, muchísimas gracias a usted, a su esposa que también facilitó esta am, conversación y que estuvo en el teléfono conmigo y todo pues hasta solo por teléfono siento que ella, pues siento su amabilidad ¿verdad? Y me siento muy agradecida con usted. Entonces, bueno, sin más, muchísimas gracias. Aquí ya saben, Carlos Carrasco, desde Los Ángeles, y Miroslava Pradela, desde Nueva York. Con mucho gusto. Hasta las próximas.
muchas gracias. Igualmente, cuando sea, a la orden.
Muchísimas gracias.
Ok, bye bye.
I also want to share with you the magazine that is by Molas de Panama, which is the first Panamanian delegation in New York, founded by Hilda Diaz. And this organization is over 50 years old. So in this magazine, Molas de Panama, Mr. Carrasco was featured. And as you can see, right here in this page. So if you can grab a copy of this would be great. So you can have a more of a connection with Sociedad Molas de Panama and also read all of the highlights of these amazing Panamanian people. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.